It was extraordinary to watch it on. Can you watch it without a critical eye?
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, but I haven't seen it for quite a while. It was just nice to see all the people that left the company since we did it. It was quite nice. But no, it was lovely to see it again.
Yeah,
Actually.
it's been a while since I've watched it, so it's nice. Yeah.
So when was your first? Tell us about the first time you saw it and the experience, what it felt like for both of you. I assume it's very different.
Well, I think I saw it as a teenager, maybe on TV, but quite a long time ago. Well, obviously, I'm quite old now. But when I saw it, I don't think I knew much about ballet at all. I think it was my introduction to ballet, the world of ballet. You know, so I wasn't brought up in the ballet world. You know, I came to dance very late, and so it was a sort of a new world for me. And I remember being attracted by the eccentricity of the people, the sort of glamour of it. But also, I think the idea of a company of people must have registered with me, because I've always wanted to have a company. I've always loved having a company, and this film is about a company all getting together to produce something beautiful. That's what it feels like. You know, everyone's so passionate about what they do, and I think that probably stuck with me, and I think that's what I like to do now and have done since, you know.
And your work is always very cinematic. You've always been a fan of cinema per se.
Yes, yeah, no, and I loved it as a piece of cinema as well, of course. But film was my first love, and theatre, but not necessarily dance. You know, dance in film and dance in musicals and things, but not pure dance. You know, so I think it was very influential when I saw that.
So Ashley, were you aware of it before you were offered the role of Victoria Page?
I was. I'd seen it as quite a very young child. I'd say like 5 or 6, and I really remembered the red shoes, and particularly the part in the film where she kind of jumps into them and then they tie up. It's this amazing kind of cinema moment, and I really remember that. So when I was asked, you know, have you seen the red shoes? I was like, yeah, I've seen it. And then it wasn't until Matthew started talking about doing the production, I don't know if you remember this, but you actually brought a couple of dancers here to the BFI to see a screening of the red shoes. Yeah. Probably about 2 years before we did the show. It was a little bit ahead of that. And that was the first time I'd kind of watched it as an adult and was like, oh, I don't remember a lot of that, but yeah, watching it with different eyes.
Was that an attempt to seduce them or to inspire?
Well, to inspire. I love my companies to do their research and to see, you know, to get excited about what we're doing. I don't necessarily want it all to come from me. I want them to get excited and inspired as well, so they can bring something to it, you know with the knowledge of what it is. So it was about inspiration, I guess. Yeah.
Speaking of inspiration, one of the things I really love about my job as an arts broadcaster is meeting creatives and talking to them about the process, how that mind works, where does that seed gem of an idea come and how you make it real. So where do you take such an iconic and beautiful film like this and then make it into your own work of magic?
Well,
where do you start?
It would seem to be an obvious idea to turn the Red Shoes film into a dance piece, but it's less so when you really analyze it, because the thing that it's most famous for, the Powell and Pressburger film, is the ballet sequence, which is a full ballet, very unique at the time. But if we were going to turn the whole story into a dance piece, you realize the whole piece has to be dance, the whole story, which includes making characters that aren't dance characters in the film into dance characters, people who express themselves through dance and movement. So Lermontov and Julian Craster, the composer, and all the scenes about their relationships become much more important. So that's the first thing you have to think about. Does it work as a full dance piece? You know, it's a piece about dance, a piece about ballet, but I guess I had to ask whether we were the right company to do it as well, in some ways, because we're not a ballet company. We're not a classical ballet company necessarily. We're contemporary dance theatre company, and I thought, are we the company to tell this story? I wanted to set it in the same time period, and I thought actually that when I analysed it a little bit more, we are very much like how dance companies were in those days. Experimenting with lots of different styles of movement, which we do in our show, trying new things, but also touring a lot, which we do, certainly do. And in those days, a company was full of quite eccentric characters, people like Robert
Which you are?
Helpman, and yeah, well, I don't think I'm particularly
Yeah, not
eccentric, but in those it attracted very theatrical people who were, particularly the men actually, because there were very few men who had dance training. So you would get people who anyone who was happy to swing a leg was probably invited into a dance company, and you had these sort of strange characters that sort of learnt how to do what they did through being there. But so that was interesting as well. But I think the biggest challenge of translating it into a dance piece, was to create a story, the whole story that could be told through dance, with duets for Vicky and Julian, and the life of the company. The life of the company had to be told through dance as well.
So how do you turn a beautifully talented young ballerina into an iconic role such as Vicky Page? Was he quite Lermontov with you in terms of his approach?
No.
Yes and no.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big role to take on, and I think in some ways I didn't fully grasp it at the time, which was probably a good thing, because I might have psyched myself out a little bit. Kind of looking back, I'm like, wow, that was such a big thing that we did with this show. But like Matt was saying, we do so much research, and we're very much involved in lots of conversations and things, aren't we? So we really get to know our characters long before we've learnt or created a single step. So we did so much research, watched the film countless times. Obviously, I delved into the life of Moira Shearer a lot, and the Sadler's Wells Ballet, and Margot Fontaine, and people like that, to really understand what being a ballerina in that time was like. And one thing I remember reading is they'd have curtain calls and standing ovations that would last like half an hour. They were incredible. So and then relating that to Vicky, being like, that's, she's so passionate, and she wants that for herself, and she wants that kind of level of fame, and, to be able to show the world what she can do. So it's kind of delving into that world and researching really helped us.
And is it true you met one of Moira's relatives? Is it her daughter?
I have. I've met one of her daughters, Mossy, which was amazing. She came to see it at Sadler's Wells, and she gave me a pair of Moira Shearer's point shoes, which are, in pride of place in my home. They're absolutely tiny. If you've been to the exhibition here, you can see her feet are just miniature. But yeah, that was really special. And I also got a letter from one of her other daughters, Rachel, who also sent me some photos and archives of Moira. So it was really special.
Yeah, that is pretty special.
Yeah.
Now, what it appears they've done with the film is they've taken the theatrical world and made it very cinematic.
Yeah.
Do you feel, in a sense, you've done the reverse, or
Completely,
you
yeah.
have the ambition?
Now it's back being a film, which is, it's obviously a stage show filmed. It's not a film as such. But yeah, that was the challenge really. For Les Brotherston, the designer, and myself, when we first started talking about it, was we're obviously, what we're doing is taking a cinematic masterpiece and turning it into something that is theatrical. So it has to be interesting in a theatrical way. There's so many versions of movies around as stage shows at the moment, which sort of try to copy them slavishly. And it's not a good approach, I don't think, because it's not the same thing. You have to approach it in a theatrical way. So there's virtually nothing in our version which is actually in the film, if you think about it. But you feel as though hopefully you feel as though you've seen the Red Shoes and the story that you know from the film, but virtually nothing in it is actually, things in it are suggested by and expanded upon. For example, a lot of the scenes, like for example, the two duets in the second half for Julian and Vicky, one is suggested by their time in Monte Carlo. They have this lovely, for those of you who know the film, they have this lovely scene in a carriage where they're very romantic and talking about the future and everything. And that's where that duet sort of extends from dialogue actually into the dance that we do. And the whole sequence in the bedroom comes out of a scene that is in the film. And we've expanded it quite extensively. Actually, we turned it into a duet, obviously, which is important for a dance piece, that you have big duets in it. But that whole story in the film that you don't really get is the story of when Vicky leaves the company with Julian and they go off to try and make it on their own. And nothing compares to being in the Lermontov company, the best company in the world. And so we expanded on that sequence with our whole music hall, East End music hall scene. And that's what that's all about. Slightly tacky entertainment, music hall, sort of low-life music hall. And that's the world they were having to try and make a living in. And the duet in the bedroom is about him still having this passion for the music he writes and her still having her passion for dance, the sort of dance she wants to do. And that's an example of taking a little thing that is in the film and expanding it into a much bigger idea to turn it into something that dances rather than has scenes of dialogue.
Now, actually, I know you don't have to do half an hour roll calls at the end, but is there anything else about that kind of world that resonated with you? I mean, do you feel and understand or empathise at least with that passion to give everything, perhaps not die for, your art?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, as a dancer, I'm very similar to Vicky in the way that I'm sure a lot of dancers are, you know, very ambitious and very passionate and wanting to do these amazing roles and have roles created on you. And, you know, I've been dancing since I was 3. It's everything I've ever known and loved, and I can absolutely relate to her passion and struggle. Actually watching the Beckham documentary, I don't know if anyone's seen that, but he was saying something along the lines of, he thinks that he loves football more than anyone in the world, and he feels that, like, and he knows that can't be true or mustn't be true, but he feels that he loves it more than anyone else in the world. And I really related to that with dance. I was like, I feel like that. I feel like I love it more than anyone in the whole world.
You can see why I chose a
For a choreographer, that must be a dream to him.
I knew this
Is
about
that your audition line?
I knew this was actually his personality because we've worked together a lot before, hadn't we?
We have, yeah.
And I knew there was an aspect of Vicky Page in her. It's there. I know this. That's why I knew we had someone who could do the part. And you wouldn't enter into this without knowing you had the right people to do the roles, actually. And so, yeah, I knew it's very true. But I feel the same. I do feel. I found myself agreeing with Lermontov a lot when I was watching the film, and it's very bad to say because he's quite awful in many ways, in what he expects from people, and I wouldn't expect that from what he expects from people. I wouldn't expect from people. I think it's possible to have both things in your life, but he has that thing about it's either love or the art, isn't it? It's this sort of what happens in the film. But to me, it is as important as anything else. It's almost, as Ashley said, almost the most important thing to me.
But it's not like that now. You can have relationships. You have healthy relationships.
But you know, that's a separate thing in a way. But apart from that, you know, is for me the most important thing in life is doing what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why you're bloody geniuses. What is great in here, though, is that you really hear the music. Which
yes.
is no, you changed the music, didn't you? You
yes, it's really it's a good question because anyone who knows the film will know the score was quite famous by Brian Easdale, and he actually won an Oscar for it as well. He won an Oscar for the score to the Red Shoes Ballet, which is the main, obviously substantial piece of music in it. Lots of other music in it is just sort of background music or music that, or they use music at the time for certain ballets that they're doing and stuff like that. There wasn't enough music from the film to tell all the aspects of the story that we needed to tell. And like I said earlier, the ballet is there, but the dramatic duets, the relationships, the dancers doing class and the life of the company, as I was saying earlier, all those things were not there. So I needed a little bit more possibility in the music. And I was, at the same time as thinking about this, I was working on another project in my head about using the music of Bernard Herrmann, who most people will know from Hitchcock movies. But his career spanned from Citizen Kane right through to Taxi Driver, so a big sort of film career. And somehow I sort of thought wouldn't it be interesting to sort of bring these two things together? You know, these two ideas that I had. What if? And I thought, because I was thinking of a more Hitchcock-inspired piece, I was listening to all that music. I thought, I wonder what else there is of Bernard Herrmann that I might like. And I found the most incredible music. I mean, I'd already loved the film score to The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, which is the big emotional themes that we use in our show a lot. So that was the sort of emotional journey of the piece, the sort of Vicky and Julian sort of story in a way. But we also found some amazing music from Citizen Kane, like that whole party sequence. And when we arrive in Monte Carlo, there's the most catchy piece of music you've ever heard in your life that we do a couple of times in the show. That's from Citizen Kane. It's a little snippet. A lot of the Life of the Company stuff, when they do class at the beginning, Vicky auditions, that's from Citizen Kane. It's the actual music that they use in the newspaper office and things. All things that suddenly you never would think and associate with dance. It's some of the best dance music ever written, we found, that's never been danced to, any of it. None of it had ever been danced to or used for dance. So we found this whole score picked from different places. But when we came to do the Red Shoes Ballet, what we were able to do, because his career was so long, we picked music from a film called Fahrenheit 451, is it? Much later in his career. So it felt like more futuristic sounding music from something that had been written in 1948. So it felt like the Lermontov company were doing something new and fresh and forward looking, and it was sort of challenging them. So we had this, although it was the same composer, we had this music which sounded very different to the rest of the piece. So that seemed a great idea as well. But it was for me, one of the great things about doing this piece was bringing that music to a wider audience, because I think it's wonderful, wonderful music.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it was tough in a way because she's so phenomenal to emulate and try and be like. But kind of like what Matt was saying earlier, I feel like dances of 1948 compared to maybe some classical ballet companies today seemed more free and more dynamic, and they had a bit more of, it seems like, a collection of dancers from different backgrounds. It wasn't so, uniformed, and it feels like that's what our company is. We're all from very different backgrounds, ballet, contemporary, musical theatre, and we kind of all learn and bounce off each other, and I feel like that is very similar to Ballet Lermontov in 1948.
And that I think that actually is a really good point, because I mean, all of your dance, anyone that comes to the company, you have to have, it feels like you have to have more than the triple threat. They're great actors, great dancers, but you do allow them space to grow, which is really exciting. You say you never want them, for example, if you're adapting something, to just copy. That is your part of your method, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I like. Well, it's also, I like people to take responsibility for what they want to do as well, and bring something to it. As you can see, there's so much going on in these productions. There's such a lot. When I watch it, as I was thinking, I think, God, there's a lot. We did a lot in this, a lot of choreography, a lot of characters, a lot of, it sort of almost amazes you when you watch it back, that you managed to do it all. But I certainly couldn't do it without the help of everyone pitching in, and coming up with ideas and not every idea that you see there is coming from me. It's coming from a collective of people, that all are passionate about making that piece. So I do like to open it up to what everyone else is feeling about it, and the best idea in the room sometimes as well. It's not necessarily always going to come from the most experienced people. It might come from someone who's just joined the company, but if you keep your ears open, you might learn something, So I never feel I'm the dictator who knows everything. I want to share and collaborate.
That's the sign of a great leader.
Well, all pieces have their challenges, I suppose the challenge for performers in this piece is that there's a lot of different styles of dancing in it, like really quite a lot. And, we found that the company at that time would be experimenting with different kinds of work, barefoot work, things in heels and on point, But also within our story, we have social dancing. There's so many styles, you know. So that was a bit of a challenge that was different for this piece. But I think people who work with me are used to that. The styles coming from many places and many different kinds of scenes. Some scenes are very have humor in them. Some are very sort of tragic and serious stuff. They play with emotions quite a lot. You know, that kind of variety I think is just good for any show in a way to tell a good story. You know, it has a bit of everything and something for everyone as well in a way. You know.
What has a bit of everything and something for everyone? Now you said it. We just walked through. I don't know if any of you have not seen it. You really must. There's an exhibition which the BFI have done to support this. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
so
wonderful.
Fascinating. Some of the costumes are there from the show. But did you find it insightful? Was there anything that you learnt from that you weren't aware of? You both seemed really excited by things that we were discovering.
It's a really good exhibition. You should definitely check it out. There's some amazing things, wasn't there?
Yeah, I was fascinated by the beginning of it, the sort of how the piece sort of started, and telling the story in the exhibition through Moira Shearer, who wasn't a movie star. She was a young dancer, and the exhibition tells this story really well. She took a lot of persuasion to do this film. She was very set, like Ashley, on a career in dance, you know, and it was very sort of much her purpose in life, you know, and she didn't really want to do it actually, and she I think that was very interesting, and that it was something that she almost had to get out of her system, and then she did then go back, and although she did have a bit of a film career, she went back to a dancing career and went from strength to strength, actually, you know, and sort of it didn't stop her from having that career, which it could have done because it had such a big effect on her. Oh, a lot, didn't it? I mean,
yeah.
it's that moving pros arch that you see is genius. You know, Les Brotherston came up with this idea, and it's such a brilliant thing to play with because it gives you obviously front of house, gives you backstage. It can go on. It can literally go anywhere on the stage, up and down, side to side, turning around. So it could literally go anywhere. So it's a difficult thing to work out, and the movement of it, obviously the company have to be aware of getting whacked by it as it moves around. But we really loved playing with it and using that aspect to the staging of the piece. And then I guess the Red Shoes ballet that we do, one of the reasons we do what we do is the Red Shoes ballet in the Powell and Pressburger film is so technicolor, spectacle, cinematic, all the things, you know, it's so sort of wonderful in a cinematic way, and the color and everything, the use of color. We made the sort of fairly bold decision to go like completely monochrome, you know, nothing, apart from the red shoes and the bit of red in Ash's dress. So it was almost like doing the opposite of what happens in the film. The colour is all in other parts of the show, and then when we do the ballet, it's sort of we wipe all that set with these portals that come in, and we use sort of black and white projection. That was a sort of bold idea to do to when everyone's probably expecting the spectacle of the Red Shoes ballet that they may know from the film. It was almost doing the opposite, and that felt good. It always feels good when you feel you've got a trick up your sleeve that's going to surprise people a bit, you know.
You always carry the weight of responsibility if you're doing an adaptation. Is it always in your mind? And
well, I think you've got to love it, but you also have to recognise that a lot of other people love the source material as well. So virtually everything I've ever done has been a much loved piece in terms of the ballets and the films and the musicals that I've done. They're already much loved. So you play very carefully with that with people because it's something that means something to a lot of people. So, but I also don't want to give people what they already know because I feel that's just why do it. So I try and give people an essence of what they love, but give it to them in a different way. That's always my personal challenge anyway. Yeah, well, I think obviously, it's a difficult one because of what I just said about, that you want to do something different, but you also want to touch on things. I mean, I even thought with, Les's costume that's in the exhibition that Ashley wears in the Monte Carlo scene, it sort of alludes to something that she wears in the film, but it's completely different actually when you look at it, but you sort of feel as though you've seen it.
Yeah.
And there are scenes that we do, as I say, that are suggested by things in the film, and then we sort of expand on them. So the film is totally there as an inspiration throughout, and I think it was a big inspiration for everyone who worked on it, as I say, I think to just try and recreate is never gonna work. You have to have your own take on that. What's already there is wonderful and enough to play with. I don't know. It's interesting talking about it because it's sort of I do feel that we do capture an essence of the film, but as I say, there's virtually nothing in it which you could say, oh, that's in the film. Well, we have a lot. We have a lot of different productions in our rep that actually one I would like to mention is that we do actually have another piece in our rep inspired by a Powell and Pressburger film, and also has links with Moira Shearer. And Ashley has danced the lead role in this. Is our Cinderella. Our version of Prokofiev's Cinderella is very strongly influenced by Matter of Life and Death, the Powell and Pressburger classic. And the connection with Moira is that she created the role of Cinderella in the Ashton version, which was a sort of something we not exactly used as inspiration, but and she did actually come and see the show as well when she was alive. She came to see Cinderella, and she wrote me this letter afterwards, which I've lost, and I hate the fact that I've lost this letter. I've got loads of other letters from people, but the one from Moira I've lost for some reason. And we have a little bit of Glenn Miller at the end of our version for our curtain call, and she wrote that she found the music of Prokofiev so difficult that she wished that she could have danced the whole thing to Glenn Miller. I remember her saying that, which was brilliant. Yeah, we have lots of other. Come and see us. Come and see us do. Well, we're doing Edward Scissorhands this Christmas. That's another movie, so please come and see that.
You actually answered my final question, which actually had been inspired by any other of the films, which you clearly have. I want to thank you all very much for being here. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the film. They have mentioned, indeed, Edward Scissorhands is next for us. The Powell and Pressburger season continues, as does the exhibition. Do go see. Thank you very much. Have the rest of your evening.